This examination can be found in an 1835 book created for schools and academies in the United States. The link will be in the description so you can come and view this for yourself. There is a longer version of this video which covers all the Tartaria related topics found in this book, but I decided to cut it into smaller sections so it's easier to focus on. So after scrolling past the Chinese Empire and looking through that, we come to Chinese Tartary, where we get some information about that. So the first 7 questions are part of the same one. It's describe Chinese Tartary, how is it bounded, what are its chief nations, describe them, when did the Manchu Tartars conquer China, and what dynasty now reigns in China. This extensive portion of Asia has frequently sent forth its hordes to overrun the different states of Europe and Asia. It is bounded on the north by Asiatic Russia or Siberia, on the east by the Sea of Japan, on the south by China proper and Tibet, and on the west by independent Tartary. Chinese Tartary is divided according to the different tribes by which it is inhabited. The eastern part is occupied by the Manchus, the middle by the Mongols, and the west by the Kalmyks and Songars. The inhabitants of Chinese Tartary are in general a very uncivilized people. The Manchus conquered China in the year 1644 and took possession of the throne, which is still held by the Tartar dynasty. The greater part of this vast country is an immense plain and is by far the most elevated level on the face of the globe. It is usually known by the name of the Great Plain of Asia. It is intersected by barren rocks and vast sandy deserts, and it is supported on all sides by lofty mountains, whose elevated summits determine the different climates of the great continent of Asia and form the division of its waters. From its exterior flow all the great rivers of that part of the world. In the interior are many rivers having little declivity or no issue, which are lost in the sands or feed stagnant waters. Question 8 asks us what celebrated people came from Chinese Tartary that committed so much devastation in the Middle Ages. And this question is so large that it's actually dedicated to 8, 9, and 10. It was from the northern parts of this plain, which is now occupied by the Songars, the Kalmyks and Mongols, that those Tartars poured forth who in the Middle Ages covered the earth with calamities, namely the Huns, Avars, Moguls or Mongols, and the Turks. The people to the north of the plain are shepherds and wanderers. Their riches consist in their herds, their habitations are tents, and their towns camps, which are transplanted according to their want of pasturage for their cattle. The whole of this country acknowledges the Chinese scepter, which subdued the Mongols towards the end of the 17th century, the Kalmyks, the Songars and Little Bukharia in 1759, and lastly Tibet in 1780. Question 11 asks, what mountains form the western boundary of Chinese Tartary? The western boundary of this great plain are the mountains of Beler-Tag, the Yimou of the ancients, and on the north it has the Great Altayan chain. Questions 12 to 14 describe the Tartars and their mode of living. The Chinese and the Tartars have so strong a personal resemblance as to induce the presumption that they had the same origin. The most remarkable difference arises from a total disparity in their dispositions, manners and customs. The Tartars are fierce, warlike and fond of hunting. They love fatigue and independence, but the manners of the Chinese are the reverse. They are effeminate, superstitious, submissive, and very ceremonious. In every age, these immense plains have been inhabited by wandering tribes of hunters and shepherds, whose indolence refuses to cultivate the earth, and whose restless, enterprising spirit disdains the confinement of a sedentary life. Question 15 asks what part of this country comprised Scythia beyond Imau? A small portion of the western part of Chinese Tartary seems to have been included in what the ancients called Scythia beyond Imau. Question 16 asks what did the ancient Serica comprise? And 17, which part is occupied by the Kalmyks, which by the Mongols, and which by the Manchus? This again takes up more questions than it seems, and it fills up from 16 to 25. The Serica of the ancients appears to have included the western parts of Tibet, Kashmir, Little Tibet, and a part of Little Bukharia. The Kalmyks may be considered as the Western Mongols. They are supposed to amount about 1 million. Their country comes in contact with China on the east and independent Tartary on the west. It is bounded on the north by Siberia and on the south by Tibet. Its surface is equal to the whole of France, Italy and Spain. Their latitudes are the same, but their climate and productions are very different. The dwellings of the Kalmyks are tents made of hurdles, covered over with a roof of felt, which is proof against rain and snow. These people prefer their wandering state and their portable dwellings to all the convenience of a settled life. The language of the Kalmyks is the same with that of the Mongols, but very different from that of the Tartars. The religion of the Kalmyks, like that of the Mongols, Manchus, and Tibetan nations, is that of the Grand Lama. Although this part of Tartary is distinguished by the appellation of Chinese, its relation to that empire is in many parts, especially to the western north, very lax and precarious, and some of the Tartar tribes within these bounds might, without impropriety, be ranked among the independent. Among the great natural features of this country may be mentioned the wide deserts of Gobi and Shamo, the former on the borders of Tibet, the latter on China, both destitute of water and plants, and only to be crossed like those of Arabia, by camel. The two leading divisions of the inhabitants of Chinese Tartary are the Mongols and Manchus. The former possess the greatest extent of territory and are subdivided into the principal tribes of the Kalmyks, Iluts, and Khalkos, which frequently go under the general name of Kalmyks, already noticed. Question 26 to 34 asks us to describe the Mongols and the Manchus. The Mongols are also a wandering people, subsisting almost entirely on the products of their flocks and herds, which they lead to pasture in different parts of their wide territory, according to the season and state of forage. Their domestic animals are horses, camels, oxen, sheep, and goats. They dwell in tents of felt and use covered wagons for the conveyance of their families from place to place. The men are employed in hunting and sometimes in predatory expeditions. The women make all the household furniture and clothing and prepare the food. The Mongols are said to be of a very cheerful temper, and their general character kind, frank, and hospitable. They are fond of amusements, which consist chiefly of feats of strength and activity, music, and dancing. Their migrations appear like parties of pleasure, and no people are so little molested with cares and anxiety. It is not therefore to be wondered at that they prefer their own mode of life to the settled abode of the cultivators of the land and the inhabitants of towns, and cannot easily be induced to change it. Manchuria comprises the eastern part of Chinese Tartary. The Manchus are a branch of the Mongol Tartars and do not greatly differ from them in character and appearance, but more of them have fixed habitations and are also in a higher state of civilization in consequence of their intimate connection with the Chinese emperors, who are of their race. The Manchus are said to have neither temples nor idols, but to worship one supreme being. Their language is deemed to be the most perfect of the Tartarian tongues. The Huangkou traverses the southern part of Mongolia. The river Amur, which in the early part of its course is called the Onan, also rises in Mongolia and passes through the country of the Manchus. That part of the Manchu territory which lies between the Great Wall of China and the river Amur appears to be well inhabited and embraces a great number of towns and villages. Its capital is Sagalian. So that's the end of that section from this 1835 history book, distributed to American schools and academies in the mid-1800s. This is before the Civil War, so pre-Civil War history information. Make sure you check out the other sections if you're interested, or watch the whole video to see them all in one place.